Alrighty. Well, good morning, YouTube. I am filming in my new house now, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. I don't think I covered this in an earlier video, but I slapped the Acura RL big brake kit on my 9th gen Accord, and it's working great. It's fantastic. I love it. Awesome stopping power. It's just a really good piece of kit. The issue that I'm running into, that a lot of people have run into, is a squealing sound under very light braking. It's at like parking lot speeds and with like 5% pedal push. It's the amount of pedal push that you would push when you just want to come to a normal stop, when you're not actually trying to stop quickly, right? So it squeals essentially all the time. And I thought I'd be able to deal with it, given the fact that the braking performance is just so much better than the OEM brakes. But it's super annoying. It's actually kind of embarrassing, if I'm honest with you. Just pulling up to a stop sign and then everybody was looking at you like, dude, you need to replace your freaking brakes. So what I did when I did this kit is I got these calipers from an Acura RO from Pull Apart. I went to the junkyard, pulled both calipers for $50, super cheap. In fact, the actual calipers were the cheapest part of my entire build, believe it or not, because I needed to get the caliper bracket adapter, which you'll see once I pull this off. It's kind of hard to see. You can see the top of it right there. Right there, you can see the top of it. That was $170, I think. I had to get wheel spacers because the caliper doesn't clear the offset on my stock wheels. That was 80, 90, $100, something like that. Then you have to get rotors, and this is the part where I think the issue is. I'll show you when I cut away here, but these are rotors off of an 06 Nissan Maxima, and they're like 11.8 inches in diameter, right? If you look, and it's hard to see now with the H-spring in the way on this, but there's actually just a little bit, there's a tiny bit of pad material at the very top on this side that's not contacting the rotor, and it's forming a lip. And I think that's what's giving me my squeal, because I've bent back, you have to bend back your plates here, your splash shield. You have to bend those back in order to make everything fit. With the larger rotor and the larger caliper and all that stuff. So I'm pretty sure that these aren't in the way. I bent them all back. If it spins freely, it doesn't drag on anything. So what I'm gonna do is, these rotors are only 3 months old, unfortunately. I did it to try to save $1, but right there I have new rotors, and those are from I think an 06, I think the 06 Nissan 350Z Nismo, the track edition, the one with the Brembo brakes, and that's a 12-inch rotor, or right around there, 12-inch rotor. My brother recently just did this upgrade on his Accord. He went with the 350Z rotors and has 0 squeal. He also does have different pads, but I'm pretty sure that's the lip that's overhanging right now. Everything's greased, all the pins are greased, all the contacts where the pad contacts the caliper, that's all greased. It's none of that. It's 100%, well, I shouldn't say 100%. I have a strong feeling, I should say, that it is because of the overhang on the pad that's causing an extra little squeal. So I'm gonna pull the spacer off, pull the caliper off, hang the caliper up, pull the rotor off. Then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to push the pistons back in, because this is a thicker rotor and it's a wider rotor. So it's thicker. My new rotor's thicker this way, and it's also thicker in diameter wise too. So I'm going to have to compress the pistons a little bit, and I'm going to do that by pulling off the bleeder screw, or pulling off the bleeder cap, unscrewing it, and just pushing the pistons back in that way. And I do that specifically on these four piston setups with the brakes. I do it on my 4Runner also, because you run into the issue, because I'm not going to have the pads in when I'm compressing the piston. You can run into the issue of you compressing the piston back in and actually pushes all three of the other ones back out even more. So you're just kind of playing a game of which piston can you push out of the caliper first. And I don't want to do that. So it's easier for the fluid to travel right here than to travel all the way back up through the system. So that's how I'm gonna tackle this. I'll come back periodically. I'll explain some things if you want to do this kit yourself. It's really not that hard. If you can find, I would highly suggest trying to find these calipers in a junkyard somewhere. If you can do that, you're gonna be golden, because they're super cheap. And I didn't rebuild mine, because all 8 of my pistons, I should say, 4 here and 4 on the other side, compressed super easy. It was fine. So I sandblasted these so that they look a lot better. The screws obviously rusting a little bit now, but that's fine. Yeah, I'll come back with anything else that I can find, and hopefully we can get rid of this squeal. All right, so here's everything taken off. Here's that bracket I was talking about from Fat 4 Customs. Fast Brakes also makes a bracket. I personally prefer the Fat 4 Customs. I think it's just made. I think it's made better, but that's just personal preference. My brother had some fitment issues with his Fast Brakes bracket. I had 0 fitment issues with mine. Knock on wood, hopefully 0 issues with mine. So we're gonna see. But this just installs in the normal caliper bracket bolts on the knuckle, and then because the caliper mounts this way, so it goes, these giant bolts go through there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mount the caliper back on here without the rotor. I'm going to remove the pins and the H spring, remove the pads, and then you can kind of see that lip. You see that lip right there? I'm pretty sure that's what's causing my issue. Now, it looks super small, because it is, but I have a feeling that that is what's causing my issue. So, yeah, I'm gonna mount the caliper on here. I'm gonna loosen the bleed screw, and then I'm gonna push the pistons back in with just some channel locks. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, we got the pads out. You can see that lip a little bit better now. You see that guy? I'm pretty sure that's what's causing my chattering and the squeal that I'm getting. So you can see how those pistons are just ever so slightly pushed out. So all I'm gonna do, I already have this set up. I'm gonna crack this loose if it wants to. Man, that was a lot tighter than I feel like it should have been. And I'm the one that installed it. And crack that loose. Forgive the poor filming location. As soon as I get my channel lock set up, I'll play it back. So all I'm gonna do is grab each piston, just push a little bit. See that? A little bit of fluid came out. See it coming out? That's how you know the piston is pushed all the way in. All right, you go to the other one. You do the same thing. Just pushing right on the lip of the piston there, right on the back side of the caliper. That's all that I'm doing. It doesn't take 2 hands, but to line it up. All right, that one's good. I know I'm not in a very different location. I'll grab the upper piston. Same thing, you'll watch the fluid. See, as that compressed, the fluid comes out. And then you feel the piston stop. That's how you know it's not moving no more. You don't need to go overboard with this. All right, all 4 pistons are compressed. I do want to note that you shouldn't have to re-bleed your brakes after you do something like this, because you didn't open it up. You didn't open the brakes up like the system. If I took this line off, yeah, you'd have to re-bleed the system, but I didn't do that. So now I'm going to capture all that brake fluid that's probably going to come off as soon as I empty or take the hose off of there. Make sure it doesn't fall on anything it's not supposed to fall on. Brake fluid's corrosive. It'll eat away your paint if you get it on your paint anywhere. Don't do that. So then what I'm gonna, I'm actually going to compare the bolt that came with, actually, you know what, why don't I just do that right now on camera. I'll set you down for a second. There are my two pads, inner and outer. Let me grab my rag, make sure I don't get brake fluid everywhere. It's almost kind of inevitable, but try not to let it be inevitable. Yeah, if that. And I wonder if I should be using this just to be able to grab more threads. I'll show you what I'm talking about, but here, these are lined up. This new bolt is clearly shorter than this one right here. But the problem that I don't know that I might run into, so that's sticking all the way through. You can count them if you want. What is that? 6, 7, maybe 8 threads, 9 threads at the most through. I mean, look at that. Oh, sorry. Look at that difference. That's like the entire threaded portion of that bolt is sticking through over here. The only thing I don't know is how far out are those aluminum brackets drilled. No, see, look. See how deep that hole did? Okay, focus. That hole does not go very far. So you have to use the small bolt because it only goes in about as far as that is drilled out. So that's not really a big deal, but I just figured I'd talk about it. So I pushed all 4 pistons back in. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these pads over to my workbench. I'm gonna use a file. I'm gonna file just until I get rid of that lip. It's not gonna be a lot, just until I get rid of the lip. Then put everything back together with the new rotors. I should show you the size difference, but you're just gonna have to believe me that this is like an 11.8 inch and that's a 12-inch rotor. Put everything back together. If you're doing this kit, I would highly suggest that you try to get these Rotor-Centric Rings. The hub bore diameter, that hole right there, is different than the hub hole that comes factory on all of the Hondas that this kit's gonna fit on, right? So this hub bore is a larger size for the rotor. So the rotor centers on this, and when you have a bigger hole, it's like kind of floppy around here, so this makes up for that difference. I got these from Heel Toe. It's a pretty good piece of kit. So it centers the rotor, make sure everything's nice. I ran them without it. I'll be honest with you, I ran these rotors without the hub-centric rings, and I didn't really notice a difference, but it's still probably good practice to do it anyway. So I'll come back once I have the pad sanded, and we'll go from there. Alrighty. I put a slight chamfer. It's gonna be hard for you to see. Slight chamfer on it, but there's no more lip. I actually ended up using my angle die grinder with a little like sandpaper attachment. So I'm gonna put everything back together with the new rotor, and I hope it fits. Alrighty, so new rotor is bolted on, spacer's bolted on. I have just enough space between the rotor and the caliper. Pads went back in. If you're gonna do this, it's really, really hard to slide. It's easy to slide the pads out, but putting them back in, if the caliper's still mounted, is a giant pain in the butt, if I'm honest with you. So I loaded the caliper up with this, it's called the H-spring, the 2 pins, and then the pads under there, and it slid on perfectly fine. I think it's because the pads are hitting the piston surface, so you could hammer it in, but I would advise against that because you shouldn't have to hammer it in. If you're hammering it in, then something's gone a little wrong. So load up the caliper, put your rotor on, slide the caliper over onto the rotor, and then you'll be fine. So we'll see. I'll update. I'll come back when I'm driving after I finish the other side, and we'll see if it's still squealing for me. All right, guys, see you soon. Real quick, I wanted y'all to take a look at the difference between the OEM size rotor, This is an R1 Concepts rotor, and the new rotor is bigger all around. There's at least 3/4 of an inch on all sides. If I line one edge up, we have just a ton more rotor here. So much better braking. All right, everybody, I'm back from the test drive. Sorry I didn't record any footage of me actually bedding in the brakes and trying them out and all that stuff. My wife and I just moved. I was trying to find a spot where I could bed in my brakes properly. It's a little bit of a hassle trying to find a road that's open enough without traffic to be able to go up to 60 and back down to 20 several times in a row without running into traffic or having somebody fly up behind you. So I was concentrated on trying to properly bed these in, but I am happy to report that there's a trash truck behind me. I'm happy to report that there's no squealing. Nothing squeals. I'll probably make an update to this video in several months once the pads have had time to like wear down a little bit, because if you saw when I was grinding the pad, I kind of made like a rounded chamfer on the pad, making sure that that lip was gone, so that I could properly bed them in. I don't suspect that lip is going to come back, simply because the rotor is wider and all of the pad is making full contact with the rotor. So I don't believe there's going to be a lip, but you never know. But that has solved my squeaking problem, and I am so thankful for it. And the craziest thing is that the brakes feel as much of a jump in performance from the Maxima rotors to the 350Z rotors as it did from like my OEM brake setup to the Maxima rotors. It was still a massive jump in braking. These brakes are phenomenal. They're absolutely amazing. If you can pick up a set of these calipers, the Accurate RL calipers, I think it's 05 to 11, I think is the years that work, from a junkyard. I picked up, I think if I didn't talk about this, I should have. I picked up these set of calipers at a junkyard for $50 for the pair. If you were to try to buy these new, it's gonna be well over $1,000. But if you're gonna try to buy them like from Napa, they'd be I think they're like $300 or $400 a piece. So you're still pretty, my whole setup cost me, if I didn't make the screw up with the Maxima rotors, my whole setup cost me about $480. I already had the stainless steel braided lines, so I didn't have to purchase those. But it's an absolutely incredible bang for your buck upgrade, especially if you can get them for cheap from a junkyard. So I would highly recommend this brake upgrade. It's a night and day. Doesn't even describe it, I'll be honest with you. It's just absolutely incredible. It's so much better braking. And not that the OEM brakes were bad before, they just didn't have the kind of stopping power that I would like personally. So problem solved. The squeak has gone away. I will try to post up links to where you can get the majority of the stuff to do this. And yeah, highly recommend it, guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything else, just leave them down in the comments section. All right.